Hey everyone, I'm Matthew.
And I'm Ileana. Welcome to the Armory.
This is a place where believers can be encouraged to live for Jesus and make disciples.
We want to provide an arsenal of resources that help Christians to be bold in their faith.
Our hope is that through this podcast, people will learn to love God's Word and abide in Christ.
Thanks for joining.
All right, well, welcome to this week's episode of The Armory.
Welcome.
We took a week off.
We did take a week off.
And this week, we're gonna kind of do a different episode. It's kind of a little different than normal. It's not gonna be a long episode. We kind of
A little update.
thought we'd chat, a little
Just
housekeeping.
chat a little bit.
Real reason why we didn't do, well, not the real reason, I guess. A reason why we didn't do an episode last week is our lives were just crazy. We were pretty much getting ready to leave the state for a couple of days.
I know.
We drove 5 hours to West Virginia. And then...
Which with a baby is longer.
Yes. So, a little backstory. About a month ago, we were in Michigan. I guess it's coming up to like almost, it's about a whole month away.
Since
when? A little over a month since we were in Michigan.
Oh yeah, it's over a month.
Yeah. And that was a long drive.
I think we've done a podcast since then and talked about it.
We have.
Oh,
But
okay.
just like,
yeah.
Atticus was in the car long time. He did pretty good. We were pulling out all the stops. Let's entertain him any way we can. Hopefully he sleeps. We were just driving about 5 hours, which is still, long drive with a 10-month-old who doesn't really care for the car as much as he used to when he was younger.
Yeah.
He did pretty good.
Well, it's just like he moves a lot now, so having him be in the car.
He loves to move.
Yeah, he is like, he can't do anything. Even like the playing that you can do in the car is so limited. And then...
That's true, because on the plane you can like hold him.
Yeah.
And,
but then even like when he's napping in the car or sleeping in the car... Like he doesn't want to stay asleep. And then we switched him to like a big boy car seat too. So
yeah, we upgraded. We got one of those.
That was his first, like really his first time in there, and he was ever.
Or was it a gift?
No, we bought it.
That's
we
right.
bought it early because it was like a crazy sale.
I don't usually buy things that are so like high tech and fancy. That just when there's other versions. Okay, well here's the thing. It's one of those car seats.
It's a Britax one for life.
He's 10 months old. Yes. He's 10 months old, and he will be in this car seat until he's no longer in a car seat because it keeps like transforming. It's definitely not a cheap car seat.
No, but we got it was literally like $100 off, which is why we bought it so early than when we needed it because...
Yeah. Anyway, we put him in it.
It's on sale.
He doesn't mind it, but... No. Anyway, why did we drive to West Virginia, Ileana?
Because we did a race, and it was the easiest thing I've ever done.
Yes, Ileana broke land speed records.
We did a Spartan race.
What is this? Tell the audience if they don't know.
OCR, obstacle course racing.
I'm impressed.
You're impressed. You talk about it all the time.
I'm impressed you listened. That's funny.
Obstacle course racing. So similar to like Tough Mudder. I don't know. There's like thousands of different types of races that are like that. But basically, we did a short one, so a 5K.
Yeah.
Matt's done multiple of them in the past, but this is like... It depends on where you're at, because they do them all over the country. Yeah. Or I guess all over the world they do Spartan races. But
they do.
Depending on where you're at, it will be like easier or harder, I think, right? Probably depending on
so there's
the terrain.
There's
is
four
that the
races.
right word?
They have a bunch of different races. There's 4 main races. The 5K, which is a sprint. They have like a 10K, I think. That's called the Super, and a 21K, which is the Beast, which is a half marathon. Again, obstacles everywhere. Then they have the Ultra, which is a 50K, full marathon. I've never done the Ultra. I've done the other ones. But here's the kicker. You could do one in Indiana where it's really flat. And it'd be easy because the running portions are just flat running. And then you have obstacles. Or you could do one like we just did in West Virginia where the running portions are basically climbing up a mountain, slow trudging up hills.
It was seriously like the hardest thing I've ever done.
At one point in the race, Ileana said, "This is the hardest thing I've ever done," and then she said, "Harder than birth."
No, I literally think it was harder.
And
than
I can't say
probably
anything
just
about
because.
that, so.
Well, no, probably just because I'm not really into exercising and working out. If you're into working out or into exercising, maybe it's and then you have birth. Maybe, obviously, that's probably harder. But birth at least is this is what I was thinking about. When I gave birth, I at least was there's a Bible verse that tells me this is going to be hard. And so I have a reason for it being hard. because of the fall, because of sin. With doing this race, I was like, this is literally, I brought this on by myself. I didn't have to do this.
Backstory, why you even did it at all.
Oh, yeah.
We were going to do one like a year and a half ago, but we just found out, like we were signed up and everything. We were literally day of the race. Like we were going to go, but you just found out you were pregnant a couple weeks before. We had not had a chance to go to the doctor.
Yeah, because for whatever reason, doctors don't see you until you're like 9 weeks pregnant. It makes no sense.
Isn't it 6 weeks?
No, it's like 8, in between 8 and 10, they'll see you for the first time.
Anyway, so we didn't know, like, obviously this is our first baby, so we're like, should she race? Looking back, we obviously were like, okay,
Well,
you can race at like
I probably
8
could have
months
raced,
pregnant.
but now that I actually saw like what the obstacles are, there's no way some of that stuff I would have wanted to do, not knowing about like being pregnant, like climbing over stuff.
Sure.
That's just because I'm not athletic.
So, though, would you do it now, knowing that you're in the same spot? You just found out you're pregnant. We're like 8 weeks pregnant. You're not even at the doctor. You haven't gone to the doctor yet. Would you like, oh, yeah, I'll do a Spartan race?
Yeah. I mean,
Not
I would
that you would do a Spartan race again. You said you did not.
I would never do one again. If I liked doing them and I was
Yeah.
pregnant, yeah, I would probably do it.
Gotcha. Anyway, so Ileana's like, okay, we have to do one. So, probably
So in case anyone's
4
wondering
months.
if we're pregnant, we're not,
No.
because I just did a race.
4 months into Atticus's life, 4 or 5 months, we're like, okay, let's sign up for another one. You want to do it?
Yeah.
We just signed up for the closest one that was on a Saturday, not a
Yeah.
Sunday, which in hindsight, the reason is that was one, obviously, hey, go to church on Sunday, but we work for a church, so we kind of have to be there. Hindsight, there was one much closer on a Sunday, and we could have just taken the Sunday off because that drive was crazy. So the closest one was West Virginia.
No, hindsight, I would have just had somebody watch Atticus at home and not brought him, because
True.
it was literally, I don't know what it was, but the night before the race, he literally did not sleep, you guys, like at all. Like
Yeah,
Matt and I were
it was
taking
like
turns holding him.
RSV days
It was
back
like,
when he was
yeah,
3 weeks
it was
old.
bad. Like,
Yeah.
I
We
I'm
ended up
wondering-
sleeping for like 5 hours stretch, and then but
Which
you
meant
didn't sleep though.
I couldn't sleep.
It had nothing to do with him though.
Yeah,
Like,
I was probably nervous about the race. But I'm wondering, I think I'm just going to start telling people that I could have shaved off half my time in the race if I got sleep
Oh.
the night before.
easily.
I was running on like 4 hours of sleep.
Yeah, it was adrenaline for sure.
Yeah.
Then we get back from the race. Ileana did so good, by the way. This is, by the way, I've done a bunch of these. A lot of them are in the mountains. This was definitely one of the harder ones for a 5K.
Just say it's your hardest one.
By far the hardest. It was definitely the hardest 5K Spartan. Not even close. I've done 3. That was the hardest one. The Beast was definitely harder. But that was because it was 15 times longer. But literally, there were parts where we were just climbing, holding on to roots from trees, climbing up the side of this mountain.
Yeah.
It was crazy. But Ileana did amazing.
Yeah.
So would not recommend it.
Would not recommend.
Got there, got the t-shirt, did it, done.
Yeah. Did it for the t-shirt.
Free t-shirt.
I don't even like bananas, and they hand out bananas right
That's
when
what
you
you
cross
said.
the finish line. I ate the whole thing in like 2 seconds.
Here's the best part. At the end of the race, I'm speaking. My reaction right now is what I imagine Ileana's reaction was with what's about to happen. Get to the end of the race.
I know.
They
what
give
you're
us our
gonna
medal,
say.
and then there's these 2 idiots, weirdos, and they go, "Hey, would you like to run an extra mile? No obstacles, just run, and we'll give you this pin."
No, it's not even a pin. It's a.
Oh, that's what they called it.
No, they called it a chip.
Oh, the chip. I thought it was
It's like
pin.
it's like a fake poker chip, plastic coin.
Ileana and I looked at him like,
No, and then they said you get this coin or this chip in bragging rights.
and Ileana and I look at him like, nah, like the gall that
I
they would
literally
have.
felt like I had just given birth, and somebody was like, "Oh, do you want to like go push again for 30 minutes and see when you have bragging
And here's
rights?"
the
And I'm
thing.
like, "No, I don't want to."
If it was like a really cool, like token, I'd consider
Or
it.
like you got something for free.
But it was just like this. It looked like it was made in a 3D printer, like under the table. Like it was not. I'm like, no, I'm not running another mile.
I'm not really one to like collect medals or accolades or something. So even if it was something like that, I probably would have. Well, I definitely would have not done it. Either way, we did the race. What else has been going on in our life? That can't be the only thing. We have a baby.
Yeah, people knew that though.
Just kidding.
I love it. What else is going on? The leaves are falling around here, which I feel like is
Yeah,
very
the
early.
weather-
It's not even September
Did you
yet.
see my outfit today? I literally wore
You wore a sweater,
a sweater.
a gray sweater.
Yeah.
So this is the thing.
I'm like
Ileana
really
is
in the mood
always
for sweater.
about to leave the house wearing like a jacket of some kind, and I'm like, honey, it's literally not. It's not going to be 80 today. It's already 80, and it's 9 in the morning. Like you don't need that.
Yeah, but when you have a sweating problem like I do, we're getting really deep. You have to wear a jacket to cover it up
To be fair,
with your outfit.
we work at a church
It's
where,
always cold.
and obviously love Pastor Wally, but that man loves it cold in the building. He is always cranking down.
Yeah, but I would much rather have a jacket on with my outfit.
Oh, I'd much rather be
in the
cold than
building.
like hot and sweaty.
And we can control the temperature in our office, but we usually have it cold.
That is true. But anyway.
So I can snuggle up with a blanket in the office.
Yeah. Anyway, this is the reason why I want to have podcasts today. One, we weren't going to have a new one till next week. We thought, let's just get on the mics.
We want to spend a little bit more time preparing, creating more stuff.
Yeah, let's just
stuff ready
explain
for you.
why. The topic we're going to talk about next week is a topic that someone brought up in a poll that they put on Instagram. Mm-hmm. And they want to talk about purity. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of ways that can go. And we thought, a lot of times we do this podcast, we're not sitting down writing out. When we first started the podcast, we used to have all these notes, and then we like kind of guide our conversation. Lately, we've been kind of just talking. This sounds bad, but like we're familiar with the Bible. Like we're talking about things in God's Word. Obviously, study is amazing and important, but we thought we want to handle that topic well. So we're going to sit down. We're going to put some things on paper. We're going to try to make sure we're intentional with what we say.
Pick out certain resources.
So we're going to talk about that next week.
Yeah.
So we wanted to basically come on here and let you guys know why we didn't have another episode and let you know what we're going to be doing next week. Also, we are going to try to be more active. Now that I'm saying it's on a podcast, we're going to have to do it. We're going to try to be more active and intentional with our social media. So we have like 100 followers on social media, which for a podcast that makes no money, it's not bad. But we realize we don't really do much engagement on there. Like
we don't.
We kind of post only when there's a podcast, which sometimes it's only every other 2 weeks, and that's all that gets posted. Our goal is to probably interact more, post more posts, post more stories, polls, try to figure out what it is you guys are studying right now, what books you're reading, try to be more engaged with with you all, and hopefully that will produce more engagement from you all, because we really do want to hear, like we heard from a bunch of people a couple weeks ago, like suggestions for where to go, like what to do next on the podcast. We have people want to talk about this, want to talk about that, and we like that. We want to hear from you guys. This is a podcast that kind of started just for you and I to have a fun way to talk, but now we're realizing there are people who are actually listening, very interested in what we're talking about. So we're like, okay, well, we need to take that seriously too.
And I think too, like when we started, like Matt said, it was kind of for both of us, like this is something we like to do together. We both have Bible degrees. Like we like to study the Bible and talk about it together. And there's not a lot of avenues to do that. I mean, I guess we work in a church, so we do that all the time at work, but like just for ourselves, to do that together, that's something we enjoy to do. But most of our followers on social media are like people who followed us at the beginning because they knew us and they wanted to support us. But our listeners on our podcast, like there's some of you guys who don't even know us personally, who have found the podcast. It seems like every time we release a new episode or have another guest on, like a whole new group of people find our podcast. A lot of people who are like not believers have started to listen to it with their families, or things like that. And so really we're kind of in this transitioning state of, okay, we have a big group of people now listening to the podcast. So how can we engage with you guys more? Because I mean, what we don't want to do is just, I mean, we're pretty personable people. I feel like personable. I don't know if that's a word. I want to get to know the people who are listening to the podcast so we can serve you guys better. So we can figure out what resources are actually beneficial for you. And so in order to do that, we need people's help with a few things.
Yeah, I think one thing is the easiest way for us to interact with people and for you to interact with us is Instagram.
Yeah.
So if you listen to the podcast and you don't follow us on Instagram, follow us at the Armory Podcast on Instagram.
At Armory Podcast.
Not the Armory. At Armory Podcast. It's on our like show notes every week.
Oh yeah.
So we'll make sure it's in there again. But at Armory Podcast, we have an email that you can email. It's thearmorypodcast
at gmail.com.
But no one emails nowadays. So. Which is also on our Instagram. If you can click email us on Instagram. I'm pretty sure it's there. Maybe not, but follow us on Instagram. No, but you can
message us.
Yeah.
Instagram is the best way too. I mean, one, if not both of us, will be monitoring that account and can message you back and forth. But the hope is that we can ask polls on there. So like we can be constantly getting feedback from you on what you liked about the episode, what ideas you have for new topics. Because we're releasing an episode, like we would like to be releasing them frequently. There's sometimes where we have a lot of ideas of what we want to talk about. But sometimes it's helpful just to hear like, okay, who are the people that are listening to this? What do they think would be helpful or fun to hear about?
Yeah. Yeah. So that's one way to engage with us. Also, new tools are coming out for podcasters. Like you can interact with our podcast on Spotify. You can send us a message on an episode. It's really interesting. If you haven't looked, I know a lot of people who listen to this podcast listen to it on Apple. So I don't know how that works. I don't think that feature's there. But there's just a lot of ways for us to interact with you and you to interact with us. And we want to try to be more intentional with those things because the fact of the matter is we have a lot more people listening than we used to, which is fun. But also, it's fun. That's all it is, really.
But I think for someone like me, if you're not someone who's like, oh, I know a lot about the podcasting world and how it all works. For me, like the reason it's important that you're liking our podcast that we release or subscribing or commenting or all of those things like through Apple Podcasts or through Spotify is because, like it or not, the way that these apps work is the more interaction we get from people, the more it will be promoted to other people and people will see it.
Yeah.
And it's not because we want to promote ourselves. We really just want this to be helpful to other believers or share the gospel to people for the first time, right? And so there's so many people out there who aren't Christians who are like, oh, I would like to figure out how to deal with this or this or this. Like I would like to figure out how to deal with communication. And so maybe they find that a podcast we did on communication and they don't realize, oh, this is all coming from the Bible, and then they want to look into it, right? The only way we can get that out there is if enough people give us reviews and likes and comments and share it, because that's how those apps work to promote it and show it as a good podcast to other people. So,
yeah, the single biggest thing that anyone can do to promote the podcast is to, on Spotify or Apple Podcast, is to like it.
Yeah.
If you are like review, like rate it. There's both
rate,
Apple and Spotify have like a 1 through 5 star rating. The more ratings the podcast has, especially positive ones, the more that podcast gets recommended to
don't
other
give us a bad rating.
Random people. Yeah.
If you're gonna give us a bad rating, just don't.
Just don't. Send us an email.
Text us or email us.
No, but seriously, that's how it works. People get engaged. People get recommended podcasts. People see it in keyword searches because it has more ratings, because it has more reviews. So if you believe in the mission of the Armory, what we're trying to do with this podcast, that's the best thing you can do to help us. It takes like 10 seconds. Whatever you're listening on, just go there, go to the podcast main page on Spotify, Apple Music, and give it a rating. And that is like huge.
And
for
it's
us.
really, I mean, it is really encouraging. Like we just had a friend from college reach out to us this past week, just saying like, hey, do you guys have any resources on this specific thing that they were working on? And you know, we were able to be like, oh yeah, what do we have? Like, what can we pull together for them? Yeah. And so like, that's really encouraging too, because I mean, that was somebody we know and who is a friend, but we've had people before ask us that who don't really know us or who just found our podcast and are curious about that. So not only is like the liking and the commenting helpful, but also just knowing like we want to be available to help outside of what we're doing on the podcast. If there's like I want to do a Bible study on this. Do you know of any resources? Because really, this is something that should be extended to everybody, right? The global church. And so just because you don't live by us or you don't know us or whatever doesn't mean we're unavailable to help with those things.
Yeah.
I mean,
this quickly became a lot longer podcast than I thought it was going to be.
Oh, really?
I thought it was going to be like 10 minutes.
Me too.
It's like been 20.
We talked for 10 minutes about the race.
Which, you know, the people want to know. Every single person who listens to this podcast I've talked to that likes it says they love the fair part is that we just joke around and talk about our lives.
Okay, that's good because we do that a lot.
We do.
So, anyway. Instagram.
Because our lives are a joke. No, I'm just kidding.
Anyways, Instagram at Armory Podcast. Basically, if you find us there, you can find everything else.
Yeah, pretty much. So,
if you don't have Instagram,
I know. Like,
thanks for listening on Spotify. And
if you don't have Instagram, what are you doing?
Well, I'm not going to encourage you to get Instagram if you don't have it. Good for you.
That's what we should talk about in the future podcast. Social media.
That's what we should share on social media. Get rid of your social media.
I know.
I did actually get rid of it. I went to go look at our Instagram profile, and I actually don't have that on my phone I'm not an admin anymore because I deleted my Instagram, so I have to re-download that account. Anyways.
Oh, I just posted something on it. Didn't even see
Can't see it.
That's funny. Anyways, looking forward to continuing this podcast. It's kind of fun. This became like a vision casting episode, talking about what we're trying to do, where we're trying to go.
Yeah.
And honestly, we only can do that because of you guys, and we want to do it for you guys. So when we say we're actually interested in hearing from you, we are, because we do it for people who are listening.
Yeah.
So looking forward to next week's episode. We're going to be talking about purity. A lot of different things involved in that. So we're looking forward to that. And we'll see you next week.
Bye.